My name is Joe, this is PC Island, and I'm sure plenty of people have been waiting on a GPU comparison with the RX 7400, especially after Valve's announcement of the Steam machine. First, I want to say, sorry for the wait. The job that actually pays the bills was calling, and I had to build a custom one-piece themed PC for a friend who bought it as a gift. It was on a deadline, Amazon was late on some stuff, so I improvised right down to the wire. Definitely wish I could have gotten better photos of it, but didn't have time. Also, I initially started testing with upscaling and frame generation. That got really overwhelming, really quickly, and too much time had passed. I narrowed testing down to 5 games and figured I'd do another video with upscaling and frame gen later. The YouTube short I put out at 4K had FSR and frame gen set to auto, and despite the low FPS, I think it performed really well. With that said, let's get into it. Today we're comparing the RX 7400 from Dell, Sparkle's Arc A310, Yeston's RTX 3050 6GB, and Gigabyte's low-profile RTX 5050. All of them are low-power GPUs with the exception of the RTX 5050. Sparkle's Intel Arc A310 has 4 GB of GDDR6 memory on a 64-bit bus, a total board power of 50 watts, its PCI 8X 4.0, and claims GPU clock speed of 1000 MHz. Yeston's RTX 3050 has 6 GB of GDDR6 memory on a 94-bit bus, a TDP of 70 watts, PCIe 8X 4.0, and boasts clock speed of up to 1477 MHz. Gigabyte's low-profile RTX 5050 has 8 GB of GDDR6 memory on a 128-bit bus, has a TDP of 130 watts, which unlike the rest of the cards requires an 8-pin power connector, runs PCIe 8X 5.0, and boosts up to 2587 MHz. And finally, the OEM RX 7400 from Dell has 8 GB of GDDR6 memory on a 128-bit bus, a total board power of 55 watts, runs PCIe 8X 4.0, and boosts up to 2300 MHz. The rig I used for testing has a Ryzen 9600X, 32 GB of DDR5 RAM clocked at 6000 MHz, a Gigabyte B650M Gaming Plus Wi-Fi motherboard, Kingston NV3 1TB M.2 4.0 SSD, the Thermalright Peerless Assassin air cooler, a Thermaltake Smart 600-watt power supply. For the sake of testing, all fans were set to max RPM. Starting out, Black Myth Wukong was tested with TSR and sharpening at 100. 1080p low settings has the RTX 5050 leading the pack with 140 FPS and 97 minimum. The RTX 3050 and RX 7400 are close, but the 3050 is ahead with a 37 FPS average versus 31 and a minimum of 31 versus 25. Unsurprisingly, the Arc A310 trails the other cards, a trend you will see throughout the test. But I suffered its performance all the way up to 4K just because I wanted to stress all the cards out as much as possible. I'm basically not even going to mention it from now on. Medium settings sees the RTX 5050 performance drop by 42%, but still leads the pack with 59 average and 47 minimum. The 3050 once again leads the RX 7400, 28 to 24 and 22 to 18. Medium settings sees the RTX 5050 performance drop by 42%, but still leads the pack with 59 average and 47 minimum. The 3050 once again leads the RX 7400 28 to 24 and 22 to 18. High settings has the RTX 5050 averaging 43 with a minimum of 36, while the 3050 and 7400 are separated by 2 frames on both the minimum and the average. 1440p continues the previous trend of the RTX 5050 more than doubling the performance of the 3050, with the RX 7400 always trailing by a thin margin. Performance with the Arc A310 was so bad that it refused to work in combination with OBS. 4K, low, medium, and high settings all had the RTX 5050 dropping below 30 FPS, with the 3050 and 7400 dropping below 10. In Black Ops 6, 1080p still has the 5050 leading the pack across the board, but also we see the 7400 pull ahead of the 3050. While the minimum FPS is a little over 20% worse than the 3050, it still manages to pull ahead in the average. On the extreme preset, we see the 3050 come neck and neck with the 7400 with a 2-frame difference on average and the exact same minimum. 1440p is relatively similar, seeing the 3050 performing almost identical to the 7400 at the balanced and extreme presets. At 4K, the 5050 is surprisingly playable. However, to the surprise of no one, the rest of the cards just can't keep up. The 7400 pulls slightly ahead at each setting with the added benefit of having better minimum FPS also. Moving on to Cyberpunk 2077, I was surprised. It's been updated and optimized so well that I really thought it would do better at native settings. Regardless, the 5050 leads by more than double the performance of the 3050 and 7400 with the A310 coming in last place as usual. The one exception here is 1440p high, where the 7400 pulls ahead of the 3050 averaging 28 with a minimum of 24 to the 3050's average of 24 and minimum of 20. Continuing with Doom in the Dark Ages, the 3050 and 7400 are all over the place. 1080p at the lowest setting, handheld, continues the trend of the 7400 slightly trailing the 3050, but minimum setting sees the 7400 pull ahead by about 20% average FPS and tied for the minimum. The Ultra preset widens the margin with both the average and minimum by 15% and 24% respectively. 1440p leaves the 7400 slightly behind the 3050 at every preset, while 4K handheld has Team Green and Team Red averaging 16 FPS, but Team Red manages a better minimum. Medium has AMD trailing again, and Ultra has them with the same average, but Team Green wins the minimum. Finally, we come to Marvel Rivals. The RTX 3050 leads the 7400 by 10 frames in the average and 7 in the minimum. Medium has the RX 7400 several frames behind in both categories, but high has them both hitting 27 FPS average, with the RX 7400 leading by 6 frames in the minimum. The RX 7400 falls behind across all graphical presets at 1440p and continues the trend all the way through 4K. The RX 7400 manages to start catching up on the high preset, but misses the tie by 1 FPS. Out of 5 games tested, the RX 7400 only managed to consistently beat the RTX 3050 in a single title, trading blows through 2 more, and consistently falls short in the last 2. While I'm a bit surprised, I guess we really shouldn't be. The RTX 3050, on paper, beats the RX 7400 specs, and overall, the benchmarks are representative of that. The RTX 5050 leading by double or more in almost every single test really threw me off. I really thought the gap would be a little smaller between the 3 cards. I'm sure nobody's surprised to see Intel in last place here, but I have heard that the Arc A310 can clock to about double what the specs say. Might test that out in the future, but I don't think I will unless I get really bored. Now, given the results, I'm sure everybody's just as disappointed as I am. But there's one more thing to note. This card very obviously does not have great driver support. It's not even clear how you go about updating the driver. AMD Adrenalin says it's updating the driver, but Dell's way seemed to give better performance. Even if it was only by 2 frames, it was still consistently 2 frames. I opened up 3D Mark to run tests, but the RX 7400 refused to work with the software. It froze and crashed the entire computer while it was trying to get the hardware info. On the few attempts where I got it to load into the menu, it just froze and crashed before I could load the benchmark. I couldn't for the life of me figure it out. And with extremely limited info, I just gave up on running Steel Nomad. But that's AMD, right? They're always behind on driver support, or the driver support is just not there. And with the recent controversy about driver support, it's kind of up in the air where this one sits. Hopefully, the RAM shortage doesn't increase GPU costs too much. But if it does, I hope they finally bring this card to the consumer market with better driver support. Despite drivers not being great, and benchmarks showing it's probably not worth the hassle of trying to get one, I already have tested it out in my living room on my LG C3, and it worked great. I played through the entire Spyro Reignited trilogy, achieving 4K 30 and 2K 60 with upscaling. There was minimal stuttering and only minor settings adjustments. I just wanted something that isn't an eyesore to play games on with my girlfriend or while I hang out with the dogs. In the short time I spent with it in the living room before I started testing, I was very happy. The 9600X has definitely caused some heating issues in that tiny case, but with a little undervolting, the 47mm CPU cooler should be sufficient. I almost got the Minis Forum 7945HX3D, but now that RAM prices have doubled or more, I'm not sure that I want to shell out $400 for 32 gigabytes of laptop RAM. And that's that. Happy to have finally gotten this comparison out of the way. I do want to do some more tests. I want to install SteamOS or use Bazite to see how well it performs. Another viewer asked me to do some emulation testing, which was kind of already on the list, but I'm definitely going to need to find the time. I have a couple PC builds that are going to take up a lot more time than I really like them to. One being a repurposed Optiplex for my neighbor's kids to play Minecraft on, and a Demon Slayer themed PC. Another person has asked me to fix up a Thermaltake Tower 900 with a custom loop and twin 2070 Supers. Regardless, I'm going to try and find more time to consistently get videos out, maybe once a week, as well as a regular amount of shorts showcasing the builds and giving out free Steam keys. My friend and I had a small amount of codes that we didn't want or already had, so I figured it's the season of giving, why not give them away? With that all out of the way, I'm at the end of the video. Are you guys still interested in getting your hands on one? Want to see how the 3050 and 7400 compare with their respective upscaling methods? Let me know any of that or whatever else is on your mind in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be back with more content as soon as I can.